Hi there, I'm Alli, and today we are doing 4 Dollar Tree spring DIYs, so let's go to the first project. For this first project, I'm using these paint colors, and I did mix in a little bit of white to make them a bit more pastel, and I added about equal parts baking soda because I really wanted to create some texture. So I'm starting with a pack of the 18 Dollar Tree plastic eggs, and I began painting them with the colors because I'm going to be making a really cool Easter wreath. Just as a little tip, I put a toothpick that was in the hole in the bottom of these plastic eggs to help me hold on to it a little bit better so I can paint it and not make a huge mess. And then so they would dry, I stuck the toothpick end into a piece of scrap styrofoam. It did take a total of 2 coats of the paint to completely cover each egg. After a few hours of drying, I used black paint and a bristle brush to lightly add some speckles on the eggs. I let everything dry completely overnight before moving on to the fun part, which is assembling the wreath. I'm using a 14-inch foam wreath form from the craft store. When doing this, you have to make sure that you hold the egg into its position until the hot glue cools. Otherwise, the eggs are just going to fall off. They're not going to want to stick. And I also, when I was arranging this wreath, I just tried to vary the position, the spacing, and the color placement of each of the eggs. Now to fill in the empty spaces, I'm using several packs of Dollar Tree moss. I'm using 2 packs of reindeer moss, some Spanish moss, and then this little variety pack. I used a good amount of hot glue on the area of the wreath that I wanted to fill in, and then pushed the moss really into that hot glue to hold it into place. Throughout the wreath, I varied the moss types just to add some extra texture and variety, and I just think this turns out so beautiful. I love this natural look. I think it's super popular right now, and it just looks awesome. It's almost reminiscent of a bird's nest. I also made sure the variety pack had some little mushroom pieces, and I included those in the wreath as well. As good as this looks here, I thought it was a little plain, so I decided to add in these little white flowers that were from Dollar Tree. I separated the flowers into smaller little bunches and then glued them throughout the wreath. I did my best to kind of tuck the stems into the moss to hide it so it really looked incorporated. And then finally, for a finishing detail, because why not go a step further, I used some Dollar Tree jute twine and just wrapped it loosely all the way around the wreath, not overlapping the eggs, but just kind of around in the spots where the moss was, and I absolutely love how this turns out. It looks stunning and just completely high-end. Project number 2, I made this really cute DIY garden box, and this project is very special because it's my official entry into Heidi Sonboul DIY's Creative Champion Contest. Now there are 10 of us channels competing to take home that title, and it's going to be up to you to decide who is the winner and who moves on to the next round. So if you want to find out how to vote, I put a link down in the description box that will take you over to Heidi's channel where you can vote for the best creator, your favorite creator, vote for me. And if you also want to see what everyone else is creating, there's a link to hop along for a Friend Friday hop in the description as well, and that will take you around to everyone's channel so you can see all of their amazing projects. So once you're done watching this video, check out those links, but let's move on to project number 3. Next up, I wanted to try my hand at making a really cool pedestal stand using a Dollar Tree candlestick, a little round wood plaque from Hobby Lobby, and a large Dollar Tree burner cover. I'm using a combination of E6000 glue and Gorilla brand hot glue for a super strong hold. I first glued the round, technically the top of the candlestick, that's going to be the bottom, onto the wood plaque. I then glued the square end of the candlestick to the bottom center of the burner cover. And I set these aside to dry for about an hour. Next, I'm stringing some Dollar Tree wood beads onto some floral wire, and I first chose the medium-sized beads because this is a variety pack. And once I got enough beads to wrap around the candlestick, I used some of that Gorilla brand hot glue and wrapped the wire to secure the beads. And I just repeated that around the top neck of the candlestick, and then around the base, I did this whole process again, but using the smallest beads that came in the pack to add some detail around the base. Now once all that glue really set, I'm using Dollar Tree caulking to fill in the gaps around the beads. This will really make this whole piece look incorporated, like one solid piece and not made out of a bunch of random Dollar Tree items. I wasn't trying to make it perfect, but in the spots where I didn't want the caulk, I used a wet paper towel to just wipe some of that off. But I do really love the texture that it gave, especially on the candlestick. Now once all of that dried, I mixed up some white chalk paint with a little black and a little bit of a taupey brown color to make a warm gray. I then painted the entire pedestal with 2 coats of the paint mixture. This project takes a lot of drying, but after that paint dried, I lightly dry brushed on some white chalk paint to really bring out the details in the beads and on the candlestick and even around the edges of the burner cover. This is so cute as is and is so versatile, but I wanted to make a few spring accessories to decorate it with. So I first painted this birdhouse and then just added some moss around the base. And then I also dry brushed these 2 terracotta pots, both from Dollar Tree. I filled the bottoms with styrofoam, put in some Spanish moss, added those cute little Dollar Tree carrots, and stacked the pots together. And here is how this project turned out. It just looks so incredible, like it was made out of stone or concrete or something, and I just love the finished look. Now let's move on to make some wall art. I'm using this Valentine's vertical sign, and I removed the metal heart, and I also tried peeling off the paper off the sign, but that was sort of unsuccessful. So I ended up just using some sandpaper to smooth everything down. Now this is completely optional. I sprayed the sign with a light coat of primer, but I don't think this was necessary because I went in and just painted the entire sign with this Italian sage paint, and it had super great coverage. But at this point, the remaining paper on the sign started to peel up a bit, so I did have to peel that off and repaint that part. But in all, it just took 2 coats of paint to cover the entire sign. Now I'm taking these 3 Dollar Tree mini frames and I removed everything out of them, and I also removed the stand off the back. I covered the frame backings with some scraps of canvas fabric that I absolutely love and always have in my stash. What I did was just attach it with some hot glue, and as a helpful tip, cut the corners off of the edges like so that it will easily fold over. And all I did was stick that back into the frame without the glass. Then I measured and spaced out the frames and hot glued them down as evenly spaced as I could onto the sign. And finally, to finish everything, Dollar Tree has come out with these amazing laser cutouts. Let me know in the comments if you have found these at your Dollar Tree. I picked 3 of the floral shapes and just glued them to the center of each frame. And that completes this project. I love this sage green color for the springtime this year, and I think this is gonna look really great in my kitchen, which is a video that's coming up very soon. This last project is not a Dollar Tree DIY, but it could be. I'm starting with a 12 by 12 plywood sign, but you could use one of the square Dollar Tree signs as well. And I painted it with this coral color. Now I used some water to dilute the paint a bit because I really wanted to see that wood grain show through. I also stained this dowel. It was pre-cut to 12 inches at the craft store with some early American wood stain. Once the paint on the sign dried, I cut this faux leather to cover the bottom third of the sign like so, and so I'd have enough to fold over the edges. Now I glued it down by only gluing along the 3 sides to create a pocket, and I folded the excess leather over the back so everything looked nice and seamless. I then took 2 leather strips and glued them down to the front of the sign. I flipped the sign over and brought in that dowel that I stained, and then took the leather and wrapped it around the dowel and kind of glued it right underneath the dowel, right where it touches the sign to hold it into place. Now, because I love adding extra details, they take the DIY so much further, I took these 2 upholstery nails, snipped off the little end, and glued them down to the sign. In the center of the sign, I used Dollar Tree rub-on transfer letters to spell out the word bloom. And finally, I stuck 3 matching floral picks into the pocket to complete this sign. And this project was just really fun, trying something a little bit out of the ordinary, and I love the bright pink color. Once again, all of the links that you need for voting in this contest and moving on to see the rest of the hop are down in the description box. Don't forget, cast your vote for Actually Alli DIY if you really enjoyed these projects and want to see me move on to the next round. So thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate your time and your votes, and I hope I can see you again for the next round. Bye!